foremost as black or white or Asian or Latino, not as gay or straight, immigrant or native born, not Democrat or Republican, but as Americans first, bound by a common creed. Voices Dr. King believed would have the final word. Voices of unarmed truth and unconditional love. And they're out there, those voices. They don't get a lot of attention. They don't seek a lot of fanfare. But they're busy doing the work this country needs doing. I see them everywhere I travel in this incredible country of ours. I see you, the American people. And in your daily acts of citizenship, I see our future unfolding. I see it in the worker on the assembly line who clocked extra shifts to keep his company open. And the boss who pays him higher wages instead of laying him off. I see it in the dreamer who stays up late at night to finish her science project. And the teacher who comes in early. Maybe with some extra supplies that she bought because she knows that that young girl might someday cure a disease. I see it in the American who served his time, made bad mistakes as a child, but now is dreaming of starting over. And I see it in the business owner who gives them that second chance. The protester determined to prove that justice matters. And the young cop walking the beat, treating everybody with respect. Doing the brave, quiet work of keeping us safe. I see it in the soldier who gives almost everything to save his brothers. The nurse who tends to him till he can run a marathon. The community that lines up to cheer him on. It's the son who finds the courage to come out as who he is. And the father whose love for that son overrides everything he's been taught. I see it in the elderly woman who will wait in line to cast her vote as long as she has to. The new citizen who casts his vote for the first time. The volunteers at the polls who believe every vote should count. Because each of them, in different ways, know how much that precious right is worth. That's the America I know. That's the country we love. Clear-eyed, big-hearted, undaunted by challenge, optimistic that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. That's what makes me so hopeful about our future. I believe in change because I believe in you, the American people. And that's why I stand here as confident as I have ever been that the state of our union is strong. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. President's seventh State of the Union address, as advertised. Not a lot of programs for tomorrow and the next year. As the President said, I want to think 5 years ahead. Said I want to think about the big picture. A reminder maybe of who we are, where we came from, how we're supposed to roll. And uplifting in many ways.
Chris Wallace is here from Fox News Sunday. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought it was one of the more effective State of the Union speeches that this president has delivered, precisely because it was not like most State of the Union speeches. It wasn't a legislative laundry list. It was much more thematic. I think the intent here was clear. There's nothing that a president can do to ensure or try to ensure his legacy more than to get somebody of his own party to succeed him. We know what's going to happen if a Democrat succeeds Barack Obama as opposed to whether a Republican succeeds. So I think he was making a couple of main arguments today. One, he was saying the last 7 years have been good. Obviously, there's a disagreement about that, but he was making as effective an argument as he can as to why the last 7 years.
He was specific about the points of that.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of those are arguable.
12 million jobs created, unemployment cut in half. Those things about which he was specific are sort of facts.
Oh, no, absolutely. And then he was clearly pushing back against a lot of the Republican criticism, a lot of the Republican negativity about the state of the country and the economy, the state of the country in terms of security. And he used words like political hot air, peddling fiction, over-the-top claims. He talked specifically and with a lot of passion about that our country is defined by our diversity and our acceptance of all faiths and not insulting Muslims, specifically, obviously referring to comments that Donald Trump has made about excluding all foreign Muslims from the country. And I think to a large degree he's trying to frame what he thinks the political debate should be on terms that would be most advantageous to whoever the Democratic nominee is.
And in many cases trying to get back to the roots of who we are. We are not, as a nation, and never have been, one who pushes people away. In fact, the times throughout our history where that has happened have been times upon which we look with great shame in many cases. And the president saying tonight, there is hope in America, there's improvement in America. America is the place to which the world comes when it needs leadership. He specifically said you don't go to Beijing and Moscow when you need help. You come to the United States answers the call. And he very much made a case that he has made for years and years, and that is stay the course, don't overdo it, don't overreact, keep it calm, let diplomacy run its course, and things will work out better. There are plenty of arguments to be made against all of those points, but he's been true to who he is on those points.
Absolutely. I was just going to pick up on what you just said. There are two sides to that argument, and especially, I thought, on the security side, there are a lot of points he made that I think Republican critics, even some Democratic critics, will disagree with. He talked about Syria as if he had a strategy for dealing with Syria. A lot of people think he doesn't. He talked about ISIS as if he has a strategy for dealing with ISIS. A lot of people think he doesn't. So there are two sides to the argument. He was arguing his case. I thought he did it effectively, but that doesn't in any way mean that the other side of the argument is therefore invalid.
Shannon Bream is our correspondent who's inside tonight, was there for the address and for the reactions. And some very familiar faces on the row here with some signatures on television. Shannon, how did it play inside?
Well, of course you would expect that there is reaction along party lines. There are Democrats who are cheering what the president had to say. There are others, Republicans and many of them in the 2016 field, who are saying he still didn't lay out the strategy they'd like to see with ISIL, with ISIS, with Daesh, or whatever you want to call it, or with Syria. I mean, they still have serious questions about how he's going to get those things done. The president came into the speech tonight with a 53% disapproval rating on the way that he's running the country, his job approval. Our latest Fox News poll shows that when people were asked, do you think the country is strong and confident, 71% of them said no. So he knows he had a lot of ground to make up. We were told it would be a very forward-looking speech, but of course the president, this being his final State of the Union, did take time to talk about things that he's proud of accomplishing. He talked about the Affordable Care Act. He says millions more are covered, healthcare inflation costs are going down, and he talked about the fact that businesses are still adding jobs. He talked about that historic climate change agreement with some 200-plus countries coming together in Paris. So he talked about also the fight to legalize gay marriage in every state. So he clearly was talking about highlighting some of the events he's proud of having accomplished as president. But there were those future forward themes of talking about not disparaging people, as you and Chris talked about, not talking ill of Muslims and of immigrants. He said immigrants aren't the reason that wages have been impacted here in the States. He said those decisions are made in boardrooms. There was a lot of talk of income inequality, of concentration of wealth at the top of corporations. And he said that American people, many of them feel like their voices are lost to the rich and powerful. So themes that we're hearing in the 2016 campaign and looking forward were certainly things he was talking about tonight. But as you would imagine, the partisan reaction is predictable, Shep.
Certainly it is. Chris Wallace, he also talked about his regrets. He said, I have few, but one of them is that the partisan rancor has gotten worse, not better.
Well, and that's interesting because, of course, that was one of the key notes of his run for president in 2008. And in fact, when he first became famous delivering the keynote address at the 2004 John Kerry convention in Boston, he talked about there's not a red states or blue states as the United States. Well, he's entering his final year and making his final address, likely, to the joint session of Congress, with the country as politically divided as ever. And I think probably more so than when he came into office, and that's what he said specifically has been a regret. And he took some responsibility, but also said it's the responsibility not only of the other Republican and Democratic members in the chamber there, but of course, ultimately, of the American voters. And they're making demands to fix the system.
One thing that was new to us tonight is that Joe Biden, the vice president, who you see now, has been tasked with curing cancer and beginning a project to do just that. And as the president was saying it, the vice president leaned over to Paul Ryan in the background and said, that's news to me. So it maybe, we read the excerpts in advance, so we knew it was happening. Maybe Joe Biden but it's a lofty goal.
He knew it was happening. In fact, Biden had pushed very hard for this idea. And, of course, all this comes against the backdrop of the tragic death last summer of his eldest son, Beau, from brain cancer. Biden had been pushing very hard for a moonshot, like Kennedy, talking about going to the moon in a decade, a moonshot, a huge national effort to cure cancer, wanted it to be a big part of the speech. They weren't able to get it together as anything more than just this announcement. But, as he said, he's delegating Biden, as he put it, to be in charge of mission control, to lead the fight. It clearly isn't something that's going to happen in the next year, but to begin to lead the fight to cure cancer, which has hit his family and obviously has hit so many millions of families across America.
In a perfect world, I know there's no such thing, but no matter who the president, whether you voted for him or didn't, whether you like him or hate him, in a perfect world, these nights are to make us feel a little better about who we are, to remind us where we came from, what our goals as a society have always been, what the founding fathers laid out, the way we're carrying on those traditions, or bastardizing them. And after tonight's speech, do you feel better about things?
Well, I thought at the end, and the man delivers a beautiful speech, and regardless of whether you agree or not with the substance, the fact that, as he built up to the ending and, seeing all those individuals and having confidence and faith, and then ending with a line, the state of our union is strong, that can't help whether you agree with it or not. You can't help but feel a little bit enlivened as an America, a little bit empowered as an American. Now we go back to reality. And we should say, speaking of reality, there's the Speaker of the House. While the Speaker of the House was practicing his poker face, and I must say he did a very good job. I didn't know whether
he nailed it.
He had two deuces or a royal flush during the entire speech.
He had that down.
But his office and under his name put out a statement about...
Listen to this. This is hilarious. Listen now. I want him to listen to you.
Yes, a half an hour into the speech saying, this speech isn't going so well. Now, we know that he didn't write this.
He was sitting right there. Presumably he was listening, but all of a sudden his words came popping out of our Blackberries to say, the speech is going bad. It's just bad.
Well, it's not going well, and proceeding to criticize it. And
I love politics.
Politics isn't going to wait. And for all the talk, and in fact, look, yes, did I feel better hearing the speech and caught up in the moment? Yes. On the other hand, when the president talks about all the things that are wrong with American politics, he's been a practitioner of every single one of the things that he condemns. I mean, he's raised money, he's criticized opponents, he's taken the ground that somehow he has a hold on morality, and his opponents or his critics are fools and knaves. I mean, let's get real here, Shep.
We're about to move on to what we would normally call the Republican response, which now we're not supposed to call it that anymore, and that's fine. I don't care what you call it. I don't think how labels matter all that much. But Nikki Haley, the rising star in the Republican Party by all estimations, the governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, who after that unthinkable tragedy in Charleston, South Carolina, and the massacre at the African American church, came forward and hit the right notes. According